The Sermon on the Mount is the most important section of our Bible. Those three chapters, Matthew 5 through 7, stand out as the laws for the new covenant. You see, Jesus gave this teaching on the Mount of Beatitudes. Why does he do it on a mountain? He's trying to contrast the law that was given by Moses on Mount Horeb to the Israelites. So by giving on a mountain, he's saying these are the new laws for the new covenant children of God. Secondly, he begins this teaching with the Beatitudes, called blessed. The first words that Jesus speaks is blessed. Contrast that to Mount Horeb, where the first words were cursed are the people who don't keep these commandments. So Jesus is showing a better law and a better covenant. Now, the sermon begins with what is called the Beatitudes. I want you to think for a moment what that word beatitude means. Be-attitude. Attitude that makes you be. In other words, Jesus is trying to give us a whole change of attitudes, telling us that we're not to have the same attitude that the world has. So one of the most important truths Jesus gives in the Sermon on the Mount is that we are not to let people determine our attitude. So he tells us, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. Why love them? Because your enemy is wanting you to hate them like they hate you. But he says, don't let them dictate to you how you should feel toward them. You remember in the beginning of the sermon, he says, if you're mistreated and you're falsely lied about, you know what he says to do? Rejoice and be glad, for great is your reward in heaven. He's saying, don't get depressed because people exclude you and they don't like you. No, you're letting what people do to you determine your attitudes. He said, don't do that. And then when someone sins against you, what did Jesus say? Forgive them so that your Father in heaven may forgive you your sins. See, the enemy will lie to you and tell you, you don't need to forgive them because you haven't done anything wrong. Oh, friend, you've done a lot more wrong than you recognize. See, the enemy will tell you you're so perfect, you don't need to forgive people because you don't need any sins forgiven. But Jesus is showing us, don't have that attitude, that prideful attitude. So what I see in the Sermon on the Mount, one of the most important truths that Jesus is giving us is don't let people, even your enemies, affect the way you should think and your attitude toward them. Instead, you remember, the attitude we should always have is the attitude of love, and let no one change our love for them.